folks. Another really great discussion. It sounds like different buildings and locations across our district are in different places, but some of you in this Zoom and just teachers across the district graciously allowed me to survey their students because I thought, well, okay, we have a perception of what reading looks like in our buildings, but what do students think? So I was able to survey over 300 students across 4 high schools and 3 middle schools, and they responded to this. They had to fill in the blank. They said, reading is blank, and here's kind of what they said. So while this is only a small sampling of those 300 responses, this was the prominent pattern. Reading is boring and slow. Reading is difficult. It's scary. It's pain. It's just okay. I know other people like it, but it's not for me. So there's a perception here that reading is not for them and reading is not something they would choose to do. So really it comes down to 2 pieces. As teachers, I think maybe we're over teaching books and we're also under teaching books, and we're doing both at the same time. And what I mean by that is when we assign a whole class novel for an entire quarter or semester, we're over teaching that particular text and spending way too much expenditure and effort into analyzing every bit and piece of it. But we're also under teaching books at the same time because during that semester where we as a class read a single book, there are kids in that room who would have read a dozen books. So we're missing opportunities to help students explore reading as part of their own identity. According to a study by the Pew Research Center in 2015, 28% of students report never reading again after high school. I can't imagine never picking up a book again after I graduated. That's some dire statistics. And we've heard of the term illiterate, someone who can't read, but alliterates are people who have the ability to read but choose not to. And these folks miss just as much as those who cannot read at all. In 2004, the National Endowment for the Arts found that only 4% of adults would identify themselves as avid readers, while 54% consider themselves non-readers. And this was in 2004. So I think the statistics have to be much worse today with streaming, with Netflix, with YouTube, and with smartphones. But what about our kids? Are they reading outside of school? We know they think it's boring. But the consensus is no. They're not reading at home. They're not reading on their own. They're not reading what's assigned to them at school. Maybe their parents force them to, but they don't read outside of school. They're not reading. And these students who don't read become illiterate adults. And this has consequences. College freshmen are expected to read at least 40 pages per course per week. So that's about 200 pages a week for a full-time student. And that seems low to me because I think when I was an English major at KU, I was reading 400 to 600 pages a week. And only 22% of incoming college freshmen read on level. We're not preparing them for their future. And even more importantly than just that immediate future of college, reading enjoyment has been reported as more important for children's educational success than their family's socioeconomic status. So this is great news for our students who are on the lower end of the SES ladder because loving reading can help them overcome so many obstacles they may face in their life. But it's bad news for our wealthier students who maybe have every resource available, but if they don't love to read, they're not going to be successful. In general, we know that motivation and engagement are so intrinsically tied to reading. If students are not motivated to read, research shows they will simply not benefit from reading instruction. So what does it look like in a classroom where everyone, the teacher, the students, everyone values reading? Well, folks, I'm coming to this presentation for you guys with some experience with breaking some reading rules, which we'll get to in just a second. But this is what it looked like for me and for my students. So I kind of wanted to share my testimony today. I love this email from this young woman. She says, "Hi, Mrs. Crane. Can we read longer than 10 minutes at home?" That was the homework requirement every day, was they did 10 minutes in class, 10 minutes at home. Because the book I'm reading is called Shiver, and I've read the book before in 7th grade, but I didn't get the chance to read the 2nd and 3rd book. So I thought I'd reread it and finish the series. And I got kind of sucked into my book and finished it today. I was on page 70, and the book has 390 pages. So in one evening, she read 220 pages as a 9th grader. And this group of students here on the right, this is my 4th hour in the fall of 2018. We're celebrating having read over 100 books as a class. And I want to point out the gentleman on the far left in the red hoodie. Damon came into my class reading at a 1st grade level as a 9th grader in high school. And he certainly was not on grade level by the end of that school year, but made such gains, moving past that threshold of 200 on his RIT score and reading. But more importantly, he had read over a dozen books that school year. And this is Bobby. This picture was taken on the Friday afternoon, 7th hour, last class of the day, right before spring break. So Bobby is your typical cool kid, too cool for school, but as everyone was packing up, ready to go on vacation for a week and stay home for a week and not be at school, waiting for the bell to ring, Bobby chose to read his book. This is Casey and Kendal, best friends. You know those two girls in your class who are just best friends and they just can't stop talking and they're driving you crazy because they're not listening. Eventually, they started choosing the same book, and instead of talking about boys or sports or homework, they were talking about what they were reading. So they always chose to read the same book together all year, and that was really exciting to see. And that was something that before some policy change in Blue Valley was not allowed. This is Angel, Natalie, and Bella. I had the opportunity, I was given some free tickets to see the premiere of The Hate U Give when it came out in theaters. And I said to my students, hey, I know a lot of you guys have read this book. Would anyone want to come to this free screening with me? So on a Saturday morning, these 3 kids loved the book so much that they spent part of their weekend with their nerdy English teacher watching the premiere of this movie. And this was the one of my last group of students before I left the classroom full time. Over the course of that school year, we'd had 127 students. And of those 127 students, they had read 1,637 books. That's an average of about 12 to 13 books per student. Particularly, I want to point out 2 boys. This is JR and JD. Again, your regular cool kids, popular guys, did not read, but by the end of that school year, started to see that reading was something they loved, and they chose to enroll in honors English as sophomores and are currently taking AP Lang and Composition. JR in particular never thought of himself as going to college, so his trajectory was changed because of his love of reading. So this brings us to, how do we make this happen in Blue Valley? We need to start breaking some reading rules, starting with assigning whole class novels exclusively, attaching penalties or incentives to reading logs, or to reading, like reading logs, assigning texts according to Lexile level. And folks, I know that there's an intervention program in our district that does just that to support our struggling readers, but we're gonna do our best to have positive change in our classrooms, in our general ed classrooms. We're gonna stop expecting students to read more often than we do ourselves. And instead, we're gonna let students choose what they wanna read. We're gonna give them time and space to read for the sake of reading. We're gonna be data informed, but student driven. And that means we're gonna confer with students about what they read every day. And we're gonna be transparent about our reading lives. So we have had some district policy changes that is going to make this happen in reality. Before the change this year, students could choose their own books, but they could not choose the same one as their friend in their class. So no student could choose more than one of the same title. They couldn't talk about what they were reading, and teachers couldn't assign learning tasks based on choice reading. But now up to 5 students can choose the same book in class. Students can talk about what they're reading, and they can have assignments based on choice reading. So the heart of this series is to uncover how to create passionate readers in Blue Valley. Our goal is to make our reading values a reality. To meet these goals, we're going to focus on choice for students to discover what they like and dislike in books, setting aside sacred time to read in school and at home, conferring with students daily about their reading and writing, relevant and meaningful reading and learning experiences, and building cultures of community readers in our classrooms. But there's some roadblocks we're going to have to overcome first. Before, we would tell ourselves, hey, the district's not going to let me make changes to my practice. And even if I do, parents won't understand. Instead, we know that policy matters and policies have been changed. You can act with confidence that you will have the support of your district to make innovative instructional decisions. This series is going to equip you with the language you need to get parents on board. If you're thinking, Abby, just tell me what to do, here's what I'm going to tell you. This series is going to provide you with some strategies to get started, but getting to know your students is going to help you determine what to do. Acting on their feedback and empowering them to pave their own reading journeys will help you decide what approaches to take. If you're thinking, Abby, my classes are too large to confer with individual students, it's just not manageable. Well, here's what I'll tell you. We're just going to start with 3 a day, and that's all we're going to strive for, is 3 students a day to personalize teaching and instructional needs. If you're thinking, I don't have time to read, or the books I read aren't what my students will like, I'll tell you that if teachers are not knowledgeable about children's literature, they are not able to introduce students to the wealth of books that are available, and they may not recognize the effects of their teaching methods on students' attitudes toward reading. It's time to start reading some YA. And if you're thinking, I don't have time in the curriculum to give students time to read in class, we cannot say that we value reading as a life skill and then also tell kids we just don't have time for it in our school day. If you're asking yourself, what if my students don't choose good books? Let's reframe that question. How do I help students choose books that make them excited and eager to read? If you're asking, how can I hold them accountable for their reading? Let's reframe that too. Because you know that students need to build stamina and get eyes on print, how can you continually gather evidence of student reading in order to ensure that they are reading? How am I supposed to teach lessons when everyone is reading something different? Instead, how can you redesign units to be untethered from whole class novels? So again, let's turn back to the voices of our students. What do they want? When asked how reading would be better, here's what they said. Over and over and over and over and over again. They want to pick their books. They want to have good reading experiences. They're hungry for it, even the ones who say they hate reading, but they want to be able to choose, and they want time to read in class. Keep in mind that you don't have to burn books to destroy culture, just get people to stop reading them. And our job as teachers is to get them reading. So folks, in 2 weeks, we'll start with part 2, helping students find books they love. So that will be our 30-minute Zoom session. Looking forward, we'll have a variety of sessions through December and into March, conferring with students, thought logs, breaking free of novel-based pedagogy. All of these different topics will be available via live and Zoom as well as recorded sessions. If you're thinking you want more hands-on PL with this, you can request me to come visit your department or your PLC. I'm also available for individual coaching. Just send me an email. I can offer you some professional learning points for that as well. Speaking of points, if you would like to earn points from your time